Chapter 91 Stealing Treasure. While that dwarf was immensely satisfied with himself, Han Li was scheming in his mind. Two men quickly jumped out from the Seven Mystery Sect's side. After they jumped from the crowd, without saying anything, they rushed straight toward the dwarf as quick as lightning. They were Wang Juchu's two remaining martial uncles. These two men wore grieving expressions. It was obvious that the tall and sturdy man's death had greatly saddened them. As a result, they felt endless loathing for Monk Golden Light and paid no attention to his sword's transcendent movements. They were consumed by the thirst to kill the opponent and take revenge on behalf of their fallen comrade. Sect leader Wang had originally planned to block their reckless actions, but acknowledged that this dwarf, capable of mystic techniques, had to be confronted sooner or later. These two martial uncles were the only ones capable of threatening the dwarf. Rather than blocking them now, it would be better to take advantage of his martial uncle's desire for revenge and have them clash with the dwarf immediately. Thinking of this, Wang Juchu swallowed the words that he was about to say to call them back. Monk Golden Light had learned his lesson not long ago and did not dare to look down on these opponents. He propelled the gray light toward the two with one finger. The gray light immediately changed into a long beam of light and flew directly towards them. The uncle who resembled a scholar immediately suspected that the flying sword's gray light would fly toward them. He raised an eyebrow and raised his hand, launching a thin silver line from his sleeve. It collided against the gray streak of light head-on, stopping it for a second. However, the gray streak of light then rushed forward, as if nothing had happened. It seemed that the silver line did not have much of an effect. The others could not clearly discern the nature of the silver line, but with the extreme eyesight bestowed upon him by the eternal spring arts, Han Li was able to see it very clearly. It consisted of tens of silver needles fired off in succession in a straight line. However, he did not know what method the scholar had used. Such a powerful technique, capable of violently launching out many thin, feather-like needles, had greatly interested Han Li. Seeing that the silver needles had no effect, the scholar did not panic and instead began revolving his body like a spinning top. Immediately after, his revolving silhouette ejected countless cold beams of light varying in size that split into two parts. One portion turned into a silver stream that directly struck the gray light, producing a sharp crackling sound as they hit each other. Unfortunately, it was unable to destroy the gray streak of light. The other portion flew straight towards the dwarf, colliding against the golden barrier. Ding ding! The impact itself was a spectacular sight. The gray streak of light launched itself against the silver stream, causing an unending amount of debris fragments to fall. Because they were completely shattered, one could no longer make out their original appearance, but the objects that ricocheted off the golden barrier were intact, only taking minimal damage. These objects formed the silver stream and consisted of a few throwing knives, prayer beads, iron lotus seeds, metal coins, and a myriad of concealed weapons. There were even a few unfamiliar items that could not be named. Monk Golden Light was slightly surprised. However, he immediately curled his lips and thought that these mundane, common metal weapons could not possibly fend off his treasure for long. Tai! A huge shout like that of spring thunder resonated through the arena, shocking everyone present and leaving them in awe. At this moment, everyone discovered that the gray-clothed man, who had originally rushed out alongside the scholar, had drawn the precious sword from his back at an unknown moment and was steadily walking toward the gray light. About 2 inches of light emanated from the tip of the sword that he was holding. The light continuously grew and shrank, giving off a menacingly cold air. Sword point. It was unknown who had first shouted the name of this supreme sword skill that every swordsman would yearn for, even in their dreams. Suddenly, there was an explosion. Passion flared both from inside and outside the stage. If one were to say flying swords were but a rumor from legend, then Sword Point would be a legend of Jianghu that all swordmen would yearn for. Currently, not only did Sword Point and flying swords appear in succession, but also their immediate confrontation. How could anyone not burn with anger at being unable to witness such a scene? This was a moment that could make life feel worthwhile. At this moment, however, Jia Tianlong was not excited with the crowd. Instead, those around him felt a cold aura being released as he felt the flow of cold sweat. Only now did he understand what it felt like to be terrified in hindsight. Although he previously knew the Seven Mysteries sect was hiding 3 great experts, he did not anticipate that this expert would have a great enough skill that he would be able to use sword point. Had he not requested this monk Golden Light to act, Jia Tianlong feared that this gray-clothed person, capable of using sword point, could kill each and every person on his side. While Jia Tianlong's frightened expression paled, the gray-clothed man had already arrived below the gray streak of light. At this moment, it was unknown whether the scholar had exhausted his supply of hidden weapons or the scholar had deliberately stopped, but the scholar's bodily rotation halted all of a sudden, breaking the silver stream that was pushing against the gray light. No longer facing any resistance, the gray light naturally fell towards the head of the gray-clothed man. The gray-clothed man grasped his sword with both hands and fearlessly leaped high into the air. He waved the point of his sword and ferociously struck the gray light. A clear dang sound spread through the air. The gray-clothed man fell to the ground from midair and staggered back several steps. Soon after, he opened his mouth and spouted out a mouthful of blood, his expression becoming dispirited and listless. The first 3 inches of the longsword in his hand had disappeared and turned into a flat bulge. The gray streak suffered through this strike like a shot bird and fell from the sky. Even after landing in the dust, the gray light's brilliance did not wane. Instead it continued pulsing incessantly, appearing intact and completely vigorous. Seeing this event, both crowds simultaneously cried out in surprise. However, the members of the Seven Mysteries sect's cries were brimming with joy, while Jia Tianlong's side was brimming with worry. The scholar was also elated, but he hesitated for a moment as he looked at the winded gray-clothed man and the eyes of the dwarf. Nevertheless, his body flew towards the dwarf, preparing to dispatch the enemy. Without waiting for the scholar to fly out even a few steps, the gray-clothed man suddenly yelled from behind, "Quick, dodge!" The scholar's mind was startled, but he immediately began to move. However, he felt a cool sensation from his neck and saw the gray light fly past him. He witnessed a headless body run forward a few steps that soon fell to the floor. The back of that body seemed exceedingly familiar. As the scholar thought of this, his consciousness quickly faded. Monk Golden Light was completely arrogant at this moment. He once again commanded the gray light on the ground to suddenly rise and fly towards the gray-clothed man, the sole survivor of the 3 experts. He was immensely proud of the small scheme he used to get rid of the scholar. Just as he planned to immediately kill what was left of the Seven Mysteries sect after killing this gray-clothed man, he suddenly heard a sentence from a figure within the crowd. "This thing of yours flying about, I've grown fond of it. How about you give it to me and let me play with it?" Just as he heard this, he felt a formidable spiritual power approach his gray light and forcibly sever his connection with it, snatching it away from his control. The gray light that was originally flying toward the gray-clothed man turned in midair and flew into the crowd. Wherever the gray light went, people lost their heads in fear and were dodging it all over the place. Only a common-looking youth of only 17 to 18 years stood unmoving from his original spot. This youth smiled toward Monk Golden Light for a moment, exposing his pure white teeth that contrasted against his tan skin. He then pointed to the gray light, which obediently fell into his hand. An immortal cultivator. The dwarf's heart trembled and his complexion fell, becoming pale beyond comparison.